you ever wondered why the more you try to suppress your lustful urges, the stronger they seem to become? You tell yourself this is the last time. You promise you'll be more disciplined tomorrow. You swear you'll stop letting your desires control you, yet somehow, a few days later, maybe even a few hours later, you find yourself back in the same cycle. Most people approach lust like an enemy they need to kill. But what if that's the wrong approach? What if the real problem isn't lust itself, but the way you're viewing it? This is where the teachings of Miyamoto Musashi become surprisingly relevant. Musashi wasn't a monk. He wasn't someone who escaped the world. He was a warrior, a man who spent his life mastering himself under pressure. And throughout his writings, particularly in the Dakoto, he repeatedly emphasizes a principle that modern people desperately need to hear. Do not let yourself be guided by desire. Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say destroy desire. He didn't say become emotionless. He didn't say eliminate every temptation from your life. He said do not let yourself be guided by it. That distinction changes everything. Most people think overcoming lust means reaching a point where temptation disappears. Musashi would likely disagree. The goal isn't to remove desire from your mind. The goal is to stop giving it control over your actions. Think about a fire. A controlled fire can provide warmth, energy, and purpose. An uncontrolled fire burns down everything around it. The problem isn't the existence of the fire. The problem is whether you're controlling it or it's controlling you. Lust is the same. The desire itself isn't proof that you're weak. The desire itself isn't the problem. The problem begins when every urge becomes a command, when every impulse demands obedience, when your actions are determined by your feelings rather than your principles. Most men today have unknowingly trained themselves to become servants to impulse. A thought appears, they react. A craving appears, they react. A feeling appears, they react. There is no space between stimulus and action, no pause, no awareness, no self-mastery. And because of this, they slowly lose authority over their own minds. Musashi understood something most people never realize. Freedom is not doing whatever you feel like doing. Freedom is maintaining control when your feelings try to pull you in another direction. Anyone can stay disciplined when they don't feel temptation. Anyone can stay focused when nothing distracts them. The real test comes when desire appears. That is where character is revealed. Imagine two men. Both experience the same urge. The first man immediately follows it. The second man notices it, acknowledges it, and continues with what he knows needs to be done. Both felt the same temptation. Only one surrendered to it. This is why your perspective on lust matters. Most people view urges as emergencies. The moment desire appears, they feel something must be done about it immediately. But an urge is not an emergency. It is simply a sensation, a passing mental event, a wave moving through the mind. The problem is that most people identify with the urge. They think, I feel lust, therefore I must act. But Musashi's philosophy points towards something different. You are not every thought that enters your mind. You are not every emotion you experience. You are the person who decides what to do with them. This distinction is where power begins. The moment you understand that urges are temporary visitors rather than commands, you stop being controlled by them. Think about Musashi preparing for a duel. Do you think he only experienced calm emotions? Of course not. Fear would arise, doubt would arise, anxiety would arise. But he didn't obey every emotion that appeared. He remained focused on the path. The same principle applies here. Your goal is not to eliminate desire. Your goal is to remain committed to your path regardless of desire. Because discipline is not the absence of temptation. Discipline is acting correctly despite temptation. One of the greatest mistakes people make when trying to overcome lust is obsessing over not thinking about it. This creates a strange paradox. The more you focus on avoiding a thought, the more attention you give it. It's like being told not to think about a red apple. Immediately, the image appears in your mind. The battle isn't won through obsession. It's won through redirection. Musashi often emphasized focus. A warrior cannot afford to stare endlessly at distractions. His attention must remain on what matters. Modern men are doing the opposite. They spend hours consuming content that stimulates desire. Then they wonder why desire dominates their thoughts. You cannot spend all day feeding a fire and expect it to shrink. Your environment matters. Your attention matters. What you repeatedly expose yourself to matters. Every image you consume, every video you watch, every account you follow, every habit you reinforce. These things are training your mind whether you realize it or not. Musashi's life was built around intentionality. He didn't drift, he chose. And this leads us to the first practical action you can take. Stop negotiating with temptation. Most people lose the battle before it even begins because they start debating with themselves. Maybe just this once, maybe tomorrow, maybe after this week, maybe after one more look. The mind becomes a lawyer arguing on behalf of desire. Musashi would likely view this as weakness. Not because temptation exists, but because indecision creates vulnerability. The moment you establish a principle, the decision becomes simpler. You don't ask yourself whether you should give in. You already decided who you want to be. When a warrior draws his sword, he doesn't negotiate with himself. He acts. Develop clear standards for your life, not vague wishes, standards, and then follow them consistently. The second action is to replace consumption with creation. One reason lust becomes overwhelming is because modern life encourages passive consumption. People sit, scroll, watch, consume. Hour after hour, energy accumulates with nowhere productive to go. Musashi's life was the opposite. He fought, trained, practiced, created, learned, improved. His energy moved toward a purpose. Many men are trying to eliminate desire when what they actually need is direction. A man with no mission becomes vulnerable to distraction. A man consumed by meaningful work has less room for destructive habits. This doesn't mean you'll never experience temptation, but it does mean temptation occupies less space in your life. The third action is physical hardship. Modern comfort creates weakness. Musashi repeatedly exposed himself to challenge. Challenge sharpens the mind. Comfort dulls it. Exercise, train, lift weights, run, practice martial arts, do difficult things voluntarily. Not because suffering is magical, but because hardship strengthens your ability to tolerate discomfort. And overcoming lust often comes down to one simple skill, the ability to tolerate discomfort without immediately escaping it. An urge feels uncomfortable. Most people rush to remove that discomfort. A disciplined person remains still. They allow the feeling to exist, and eventually it passes, because every urge has a lifespan. No urge lasts forever. No craving remains at maximum intensity forever. But most people never discover this because they immediately react. The fourth action is remembering mortality. This may sound strange, but Musashi frequently reflected on death, not in a depressing way, in a clarifying way. Imagine reaching the end of your life. Looking back over decades, what would matter? Would you be proud of how you spent your attention? Would you be proud of what controlled your actions? Would you be proud of the person you became? Perspective changes behavior. Many temptations lose their power when viewed from a greater distance. A decision that feels important in the moment often appears insignificant when viewed through the lens of a lifetime. This is one of the reasons Stoics and warriors alike reflected on mortality. It reminds you what actually matters. The final action is perhaps the most important. Stop measuring success by perfection. Many people fail once and conclude they failed completely. They stumble, then they quit. They break a streak, then they abandon the goal. This mindset guarantees defeat. Musashi became one of history's greatest warriors through constant practice. Not perfection, mastery is built through repetition, through returning to the path again and again. Every time you resist an urge, you strengthen discipline. Every time you choose principles over impulse, you strengthen discipline. Every time you recover from failure and continue forward, you strengthen discipline. The goal is not becoming a flawless human being. The goal is becoming a stronger one. A man who is slightly more disciplined this month than he was last month. Slightly more focused, slightly more intentional, slightly more in control. Over time, those small victories compound. Eventually, you become someone who no longer sees himself as a victim of temptation. You become someone who trusts himself, And that trust is priceless, because at its core, overcoming lust isn't really about lust. It's about self-mastery. It's about proving to yourself that your actions belong to you, that your principles are stronger than your impulses, that your future is not dictated by whatever feeling happens to appear in the present moment. Musashi's message was never to become emotionless. It was never to eliminate every desire. It was to remain sovereign over yourself, to live according to purpose rather than impulse, to walk your chosen path regardless of the distractions surrounding you. The urge will come, the temptation will appear, the feeling will rise. Let it. You don't need to fear it. You don't need to fight it. You only need to remember one thing. You are not the urge. You are the one who decides what happens next. And in that decision lies the difference between a life controlled by desire and a life guided by discipline. If you want to learn more about philosophy and how to master your mind, please consider liking and subscribing. That shows that you guys like this type of content and that I should continue making it.